Rolex dealerships have a problem right now. Their safes are full. For years, a full safe at a Rolex dealership meant power. It meant you decided who got the watch, when they got it, and what they had to spend to earn it. The safe wasn't storage. It was leverage. Now, in 2026, dealers are opening those same safes and seeing something completely different. Watches that should have been gone months ago are still sitting there. Inventory that used to move instantly isn't moving at all, and the shift isn't subtle. Because the system that made that safe powerful only worked when customers were willing to play along. They aren't anymore. This is what happened. And more importantly, this is why it happened. The waitlist just died. A customer in Dallas, March 2026. She walks into an authorized Rolex dealership, points at the Explorer 2 in the display case, and asks how long the wait is. The salesperson pauses before answering. There is no wait. The watch is available now. She does not buy it that day. Not because she cannot, but because 4 years of experience with this industry have taught her not to trust an answer that simple. That pause is the whole story. He no longer knows how to say, "It is available," without it sounding like something went wrong. Because in his world, available always meant something had gone wrong. The waitlist was never purely a logistics tool. It was a psychological one. It told buyers that the full retail price, ready money, sitting in their account, was not by itself sufficient to own a Rolex. You had to be chosen. You had to build a spending record with the dealership before a watch would be offered to you. The industry's polite term for this was purchase history. In practice, that meant buying things you had not come in for. Jewelry, pens, and leather goods for people in your life who prefer completely different brands. Spend enough in the right categories, and perhaps you would be considered. In several jurisdictions, this has a legal classification. It is called a tied sale. In more than one country, it is specifically prohibited by consumer protection law. Nobody discussed this publicly. Everybody inside the industry understood it was happening. There is a specific smell inside a high-end watch boutique. Polished steel, leather straps, slightly warmed by the display lighting. The quiet hum of climate control keeps the cases at a precise temperature. It used to smell like access, like arrival. In 2026, it smells like a negotiation nobody prepared for. Now, the Explorer 2 is sitting on the shelf at multiple authorized dealers. Ex-dealership staff who left the industry are speaking about what happened behind the counters in ways that would have ended their careers 18 months ago. The multi-year wait lists that customers were placed on, some of them based on increasingly public accounts, were not real backlogs at all. They were a management system applied to customers that the dealership had not yet decided to prioritize. The waitlist did not ease gradually. It collapsed. And there is almost no playbook for what comes after a psychological weapon stops working, because the people who built the system never imagined they would need one. And here is something that has not been said clearly enough. Some of those customers who were told to build a purchase history, they did it. They came back and spent money on things they did not want. They waited longer than they were initially told, and they still never received the call. Those customers are not a category in a report. They are a specific person. They are the subject of number 1 on this list. And there are dealerships right now that have not fully understood what that means for the future of their business. We will come back to it. Number 1 on this list is about exactly that person. But first, let's talk about what happened to the value of those same watches the moment they left the shelf. The retail price trap. Picture January 2026. A customer walks into an authorized dealership, pays the new retail price for a Sea Dweller, because Rolex raised prices on January 1st, as they almost always do, and walks out into the parking lot. By the time he reaches his car, the watch on his wrist is worth less than what he just paid for it. Not by an enormous amount, not enough to feel in the first hour, but less than retail and falling. Sea Dweller prices on the secondary market are down 22.8% against the January 2026 retail price. The Air King is down 6.7%, which translates simply, the person who bought one is already underwater, through no fault of their own, the moment the receipt prints. The Explorer 2 sits below its new recommended retail price on Chrono 2.4 right now, in live listings, with real buyers setting real prices. The day date in gold is down 10.1% against what an authorized dealer is legally required to charge for it. That gap between what the authorized dealer must charge and what the market will actually pay is not a projection. It is not a warning about a possible future. It is the current state of the market, live, as this script was written. In human terms, if you buy at authorized retail today on certain references, you are paying a premium to buy from someone who is contractually obligated to charge you more than the watch is worth on the open market. For the buyer in that parking lot, the experience is disorienting in a specific way. He just purchased what was sold to him, and for years, it genuinely functioned as a store of value, something solid. During the hype years between 2020 and 2024, that was not wishful thinking. It was documented market behavior. Secondary market premiums on steel Rolexes routinely ran 20, 30, even 40% above retail. Some models ran higher. The watch he was just shown at the new retail is trading below that price on a platform he can reach in 10 seconds. The salesperson across the counter cannot change what the screen is showing. They cannot explain it away. They can only keep talking and hope the customer puts the phone back in their pocket. That is the actual shift, not a price chart on a financial report. The moment the sales floor lost control of the story, the secondary market had been telling on their behalf for 4 years. For most of those years, the market was the best salesperson in the room. Now it is contradicting every pitch being made at the counter. These are not poorly made watches. The Sea Dweller is a genuinely excellent piece of engineering. Tested to depth ratings most owners will never approach. The Air King is honest, legible, and built to outlast its owner. None of what is happening is about quality. It is about what happens when a product's cultural premium evaporates faster than its asking price can follow. And there is almost nothing a dealer can do about that from behind their counter. What came next came from directly above them, from the brand that signs their dealer agreement. The Bucherer play. The customer relationship belongs to the brand. That sentence was never written into any authorized dealer agreement. It did not need to be. In 2023, Rolex made it structural. Rolex did something that genuinely surprised the people who follow this industry closely. They bought a retailer. Bucherer, one of the largest multi-brand watch retailers on Earth, with flagship stores across Europe and major markets in North America, was acquired by Rolex SA. The industry's first interpretation was straightforward: vertical integration. Rolex is protecting its distribution and ensuring its products stay in brand-aligned, professionally managed environments. Standard strategic logic for a company this focused on controlling its own story. That reading was not wrong. It was just incomplete. What became visible over the 18 months that followed was that the Bucherer acquisition gave Rolex something it had never possessed at a meaningful scale before: direct customer data. Not wholesale transaction records or allocation logs. Real purchase history, connected to real identities, tracking what specific customers bought, when they bought it, what they paid, and, most importantly, what they did with the watch afterward. For the first time, Rolex could actually see who the flippers were. They could trace the buyers who purchased at authorized retail and listed on secondary platforms within weeks. They could identify dealerships that were quietly routing allocated inventory through back channels to gray market operators. They could map the pipeline that had connected the authorized network to the gray market for years, sustained by a collective agreement to never discuss it openly, because it benefited everyone in the chain. Think about what that means for a dealer. The client book they spent years building, the names, the spending histories, the personal details that made them feel irreplaceable, that information is no longer exclusively theirs. Rolex can now see the same customers independently and make decisions about allocation and access based on data the dealer cannot view or contest. In February 2025, Rolex shuttered Karl F. Bucherer, a brand with its own heritage and its own customer base that Bucherer had been operating for decades, with minimal public explanation. Gone, quickly and quietly. The authorized dealer network noticed. Jean-Frédéric Dufour spoke at Dubai Watch Week in November 2025 about direct consumer relationships, long-term client cultivation, and boutique partnerships. The language was constructive and forward-looking. It was also, for anyone with context, a description of infrastructure already being built and already running. The message behind the message. Rolex now has the tools to know who the customers are, independently of what any authorized dealer tells them. The gatekeepers spent 5 years managing access on behalf of the brand. The brand spent those same 5 years building the tools to manage it themselves. When those two timelines crossed, there was no announcement. There rarely is. That is how you know it mattered. Dealers who spent years treating their client book as their most defensible asset are now sitting with a different calculation. Those relationships are looking increasingly like shared infrastructure, possibly Rolex's infrastructure, with the dealer as temporary custodian. There are people inside this industry who have understood that shift clearly. Others have not yet let themselves. Rolex built the infrastructure to see around its own dealers. Number 3 is what it did once it had a clear enough view to act. The rules Rolex wrote for everyone else. There is a specific kind of authority that only works if nobody checks it. For over a decade, Rolex told its authorized dealers they could not sell watches online. Not a suggestion, not a brand guideline, but a contractual prohibition written into the dealer agreement every authorized retailer signed. No e-commerce listings, and no digital sales channel of any kind. Dealers who wanted to reach customers outside their immediate geography, who watched foot traffic plateau and wondered if an online presence might help, were told the answer was no. Rolex said so. The contract said so. That was sufficient. In December 2023, France's competition regulator looked at that clause and asked a question nobody inside the industry had asked publicly. Was it actually legal for a manufacturer to close an entire sales channel across its dealer network by contract? The answer, after review, was no. The fine was 91.6 million euros. Rolex paid it. A brand generating over 10 billion Swiss francs annually does not feel $100 million the way a family jeweler does. What stung was not the number, it was the detail the regulator placed on the record alongside it. At the exact moment Rolex was enforcing its online sales ban across the independent dealer network, Rolex had already built its own online channel for pre-owned watches, through Boucherer, the retailer it would formally acquire that same year. The regulator noted the contradiction without drama. They did not need drama. The facts were sufficient. If online sales were genuinely incompatible with protecting the brand, the question that followed was obvious. Why had Rolex built an online program for itself while the contract prohibited everyone else from doing the same thing? There was no good answer. Rolex did not offer one publicly. For the dealers inside that system, the ruling clarified something they had not let themselves think through. Every time they told a customer that an online purchase was not available, they were enforcing a rule that turned out to be illegal. Every year they chose not to build a digital presence, they were shrinking their business on the basis of a contract clause that should not have existed. The regulator's finding did not come with compensation for that lost decade. It came with a reference number and a published document. The fine was Rolex being held accountable by an external body. What happened next was Rolex holding its dealers accountable to no external body at all. Just letters, no process, and no appeal. Brad and Amy Hart opened Hauser's Jewelers in Newport News, Virginia in 1977. They carried Rolex for 46 years, through the quartz crisis that nearly dismantled the Swiss watch industry entirely, through recessions, through the entire arc of modern American retail. When the boom years came, Rolex sales were strong. They had no reason to think the relationship was anything other than what it had always been. The letter arrived 2 weeks after they came back from vacation. Authorization terminated. No violation named. No warning issued beforehand. No meeting. No phone call. No conversation about what might be done differently. 46 years. A piece of paper. The nearest authorized Rolex dealer from their location is now over an hour's drive away. Natasha Henderson ran Saxon's Fine Jewelers in Bend, Oregon. She had been in active conversation with her Rolex representative about a renovation, specifically upgrading the Rolex section of her store, planned and discussed in the language of a relationship that was going to continue. She attended a Rolex training event. Weeks later, an email arrived from a private server. No official letterhead. The message said her authorization was ending. Her first instinct was that someone was impersonating Rolex. She called the company to verify. It was not a scam. In Stuttgart, a family business that had carried Rolex for 50 years, 3 generations of owners, half a century in the same city, lost its authorization in 2025 with no cited violations and no warnings. The Rolex section had been the anchor of their business. When it went, the business could not sustain itself around what remained. They closed. Across Germany, approximately 40 authorized dealer locations are expected to lose their Rolex authorization by the end of 2026. Globally, Industry estimates put the number of terminated or non-renewed dealer relationships since 2020 at somewhere between 10 and 15% of the entire network. When analysts looked for the common thread among the dealers losing authorization, they did not find misconduct. They found postcodes. The determining factor, according to people inside the industry who have watched the pattern closely, was not how a dealer behaved. It was where their store sat. Whether the address was prestigious enough for the brand Rolex is assembling around itself. That is the part that resists any clean narrative about dealerships getting what they deserved. The dealers who ran the worst playbooks during the boom years, the bundling requirements, the exhibition-only gatekeeping, the quiet gray market pipelines, many of them operated in cities and neighborhoods valuable enough that the letters have not come for them. They kept their authorization. They are sitting on unsold inventory in the right postcode. The people who lost their Rolex are Brad and Amy, Natasha, the third-generation owner in Stuttgart who never diverted a watch in his life. People who spent decades doing exactly what the brand asked of them, in locations the brand has decided it no longer needs. Rolex spent 10 years writing rules that constrained its dealers. Then it spent the next few years deciding which of those dealers were worth keeping. The two processes had almost nothing to do with each other. That is the part the fine made visible, even if nobody intended it to. Number 2 reveals that Rolex was not trying to punish anyone. It was building something specific, and the letters were just the clearing work. The Land Dweller Paradox. April 2025. Watches and Wonders, Geneva. Rolex walks out and does something it almost never does. It surprises the room. The Land Dweller, a name nobody had on their predictions list. A completely new model family, not a refresh, not a limited edition, not a variant of something that already existed. A watch that had not existed before that morning. Integrated flat Jubilee bracelet, hidden crown clasp, the first on a men's Rolex in years. A case 9.7 millimeters thin, the slimmest Oyster Perpetual the brand had ever made. And inside it, the caliber 7135. A movement so technically ambitious, it carried 32 separate patent applications, 16 of them for the movement alone. Silicon escapement, ceramic balance pivot, running at 5 Hz, faster than any Rolex before it. The watch world, which is professionally skeptical and constitutionally reluctant to agree on anything, got close to consensus. This was something. The retail price was $15,350 for the 40mm steel and white gold version. For what was inside it, most serious people in the industry said quietly that Rolex had left money on the table. They priced it to move, not to extract. The secondary market was noticed within weeks. That same reference, $15,350 at retail, was trading at $39,000 by the end of 2025, at more than double. The waitlist at authorized dealers stretched into years for steel configurations. Some stores stopped taking names entirely, not because they did not want the business, but because they had nothing honest to say about when delivery might come. Now open the safe in that same dealership. Right next to the Land Dweller inquiry list that runs to 2028, there are gold day dates that have not moved in 4 months. Sea Dwellers purchased at the old invoice price, now sitting below their new retail value after January's price adjustment. Air Kings are being offered to first-time walk-ins with no purchase history and no prior relationship, offered rather than allocated, because the alternative is leaving them in the dark. One address, one safe, 2 completely separate markets are operating inside it at the same time. The Land Dweller made something visible that the boom years had been concealing. The Rolex catalog has never been uniformly desirable. It has always had models that moved immediately, and models that required effort. The Day Date was always quieter than the Submariner. The Sea Dweller always steadier than the Daytona. But during the hype years, none of that mattered because the heat covered everything. Every model moved. The allocation system worked because the demand was broad enough to absorb it. The moment demand became selective, the allocation system became a liability. Rolex decides what each authorized dealer receives. That is not a negotiation. It is a condition of the dealer agreement. Dealers take what comes and sell it. During the years when everything was in demand, this was a non-issue. In 2025 and 2026, it means a dealer in a soft market might be receiving the inventory that is hardest to move, while being structurally unable to redirect that allocation toward what their specific customers are actually asking for. The salesperson fielding land dweller inquiries all day has a script for this situation. They manage expectations, they take contact details, and they promise to reach out if anything changes. Then the call ends, and they turn back to the case where the gold day date has been sitting since November. There was a buyer who came into a central London authorized dealer in January 2026, asking specifically about the land dweller. Told the waitlist was closed, not paused, closed. He asked what else was available, and the salesperson showed him the case. He looked, he thanked them, and he left. He bought a land dweller from a secondary dealer in Switzerland 3 weeks later for $36,000. He described the experience as clean, a price, and a watch. No performance required. The gold day date was still in the case when he said that. What comes next is a specific type of customer, in a specific situation, who nobody in the dealership network thought to account for. Before we move on to the next part, let me tell you this. Most people don't realize this, but buying a watch the wrong way can cost you thousands, and you won't even notice it until it's too late. You walk into a store or browse online, and everything looks the same, but behind the scenes, there's a system. Prices aren't always fair, availability is controlled, and one bad decision can leave you overpaying for something that doesn't even hold its value. That's why I created a complete free insider guide to buying watches. Inside, you'll find the best watches to buy, the watches to avoid, and how to choose a watch that actually fits your style and budget long term. The goal is simple. I'll help you stop guessing and start buying smart. You'll find the free guide in the pinned comment and description. Now, let's move on to the next part. The customer who left is the one they need. This is the part of the story that does not appear in any earnings report. Between 2020 and 2023, a particular kind of person walked into Rolex authorized dealerships across the world. Not the long-term regulars, not the established collectors with relationships older than some of the staff. A different person entirely. The professional in their late 30s, the first-time luxury buyer, someone who had wanted a specific watch for years, had finally reached the point where they could buy it without thinking twice, and walked through the door ready. Most of them were turned away, not aggressively. The refusal was careful, wrapped in the language of systems and processes, the waitlist, the purchase history requirement, the relationship that needed to develop over time. But the experience underneath that language was consistent across thousands of separate transactions in dozens of cities. You came in ready, and you left with nothing. Not because the watch did not exist, you could see it in some cases, right there under glass, but because you had not yet proven yourself worthy of the transaction. Picture her specifically. She is 38, pediatric surgeon. She has been thinking about the Submariner for 2 years, not obsessively, but steadily, the way you think about something you have decided you are going to buy when the moment is right. The moment arrived. $12,000 in her account, set aside for this. She goes on a Tuesday afternoon, thinking it might be less busy. The salesperson is pleasant. He asks if she has purchased from them before. She has not. He explains the purchase history process gently, professionally, with the careful warmth of someone who has delivered this speech many hundreds of times. He shows her a lady's date just, a tutor as a starting point. He suggests she let the relationship develop. She asks, once, how long the waitlist actually is. He says it varies. She thanks him and leaves. She finds the Submariner on a pre-owned platform 18 days later. She pays $13,400, $1,200 above retail, and feels relief rather than resentment about the difference, because the difference bought her the right to skip everything that had just happened. The watch arrives. It is exactly what she wanted. She wears it the following Monday to a meeting, and a colleague asks where she got it. She tells them. She does not mention the authorized dealer at all. She bought 3 more watches over the next 2 years. None of them went through an authorized dealership. She is not an edge case. She is a pattern. It repeated itself across 4 years, across every market where Rolex held its leverage, across enough individual transactions that the aggregate effect is now visible in secondary market volume, in dealer traffic data, in the slow decline of first-time buyer conversion rates that nobody in the authorized network wanted to say aloud. Every one of those people found a better experience somewhere else and stayed. Not out of principle, out of inertia. Once you buy your first watch in a transaction that respects your time and your money, the authorized dealership has to clear a much higher bar to earn you back. And most of them have not cleared it, because most of them have not tried, and most of them have not yet fully understood that those customers are not coming back on their own. The market correction of 2025 and 2026 is discussed in financial terms, because financial terms are what the industry knows how to use in public. Secondary market compression, retail price trap, inventory overhang, and gray market liquidation cascades. Those descriptions are accurate. They are also incomplete. What they are describing, at a level underneath the numbers, is the accumulated consequence of 4 years of treating the first-time buyer as a resource to be managed rather than a customer to be served. Those buyers were the market's natural shock absorber, the reliable flow of new money coming into the ecosystem every year, buying their first watch, building collections, becoming the long-term clients that dealerships actually need. That flow did not disappear because demand softened. It was redirected by the dealerships themselves before the correction arrived, before anyone understood what they were giving away. Here is what that looks like in practice in April 2026. The gold day date sitting in the authorized dealer's safe, the one the London buyer walked past on his way out, needs a buyer. Not a flipper, not a gray market operator. A buyer who wants the watch, can pay for it, and has decided this is the piece. That buyer exists. The problem is that the authorized dealer's relationship with that buyer, if one exists at all, probably began with a conversation that went the wrong way. The safe does not know any of this. It is just full. But the people whose names were once on those wait lists, the ones who spent money on jewelry they did not want, waited longer than they were told, and never received the call, those people know exactly how they were treated. They are not carrying visible anger about it. Anger would be easier to work with. They are carrying indifference. They have moved on. They have built habits and loyalties and reference points elsewhere, and those things are much harder to dislodge than resentment. Jean-Frédéric Dufour stood at Dubai Watch Week in November 2025 and said, in the careful, precise language of someone who chooses words with intent, that brands risk losing relevance when they fail to maintain direct, long-term client relationships. He cited the automotive industry. He talked about the danger of the distance between a brand and its buyers. He was addressing the room in front of him. He was also describing, with precision, the problem that the room had helped create. Some of those dealers heard a warning about the future. Some of them were already living the consequences. The woman who left with nothing in 2021 is not thinking about any of this. She is wearing her Submariner, and she loves it. She bought a GMT last year and is looking at a Daytona. She has a platform she trusts, a seller she has used twice, and a process that works for her. The authorized dealership is not part of that process and has not been for years. She is exactly the customer they need. She is not coming back. And the distance between those two facts is not a market correction. It is a bill, arriving slowly, for decisions made when the leverage felt permanent. It never was. What this video describes is not a brand in trouble. Rolex is not in trouble. What is in trouble is the layer between the brand and the people who want to buy from it, and that layer built its own problems over 4 years, with full confidence that the leverage was permanent. The waitlist was a weapon until it wasn't. The secondary market was an ally until it contradicted every pitch at the counter. The client's book felt defensible until Rolex could see it independently. The allocation system worked until demand turned selective. The contract felt like a partnership until the fine revealed what it actually was. And the letters felt like decisions until you looked at who received them. The customer the dealer needs is wearing her Submariner right now. She bought it somewhere else. She is not coming back. If this video changed how you see what is happening in the watch world, hit like and subscribe. It is genuinely the best way to support this channel and make sure the next video finds you. Drop a comment below. Were you ever turned away at a Rolex dealer? Did you build the purchase history and still never get the call? The comment section on this one is going to be interesting.